Standing above the St. Lawrence River in Brockville, Ontario, sits one of the most historically significant mental health institutions in the province, the Brockville Psychiatric Hospital. It first opened in 1894, originally called the Eastern Hospital for the Insane. Built on the principles of the cottage plan, the campus was designed to feel less like a prison and more like a controlled village. Patients lived in separate buildings surrounded by gardens, walking paths, and farmland, all intended to support what was then called moral treatment, where environment was believed to play a role in healing the mind. But admission to places like this was not always what people assume today. Patients were often committed for conditions that would now be treated very differently. Diagnoses included severe depression, schizophrenia, epilepsy, alcoholism, developmental disabilities, and in some cases, behaviors that simply did not fit social expectations of the time. Women were sometimes admitted for reasons such as hysteria, postpartum distress, or being considered difficult or unmanageable within family structures. Men were frequently institutionalized for addiction, erratic behavior, or perceived danger to themselves or others. At its peak in the mid-20th century, Brockville Psychiatric Hospital was a self-contained world, with hundreds of staff and long-term patients who often lived their entire adult lives within its walls. Over time, treatment methods changed dramatically. The rise of psychoanalysis, followed by medication-based psychiatry, and then deinstitutionalization in the late 20th century, slowly reduced patient populations. Care shifted away from long-term institutionalization toward community-based mental health services. Like many large psychiatric hospitals of its era, Brockville also carries difficult stories that have been repeated in archives, oral history, and patient accounts. Reports from former staff and patients describe overcrowding in later decades, experimental treatments typical of the time period, such as electroconvulsive therapy, and strict institutional routines that would feel unfamiliar by modern standards. These accounts reflect a broader reality of psychiatric care in North America during the 20th century, where practices were evolving but often controversial. Despite this, the hospital also held decades of medical advancement, training programs, and reform. It was not a single story of darkness, but a complex reflection of how society has treated mental illness across generations. Today, the site is no longer what it once was. Large portions of the original hospital have been demolished or sealed off. Active mental health and forensic services still operate on parts of the property, but the historic core is disappearing. The province is redeveloping the site into a modern correctional and treatment complex, with new facilities replacing many of the original 19th and early 20th century structures. What once stood as a massive psychiatric institution overlooking the river is now in its final chapter. Brick by brick, a century of history is being erased, replaced by something entirely new. And for those who document places like this, Brockville is no longer just an abandoned hospital. It is a record of how mental health care, architecture, and society itself have changed over more than 100 years.